My dear sister, am I understanding this correctly? My 2M Alenma dollars in savings plus your 2M loan dollar, what we will both repay, that means we're buying the apartment equally, right? I asked my sister. You really don't know how to do math, didn't they teach you that in school? My sister replied. I froze in silence, so I did this. My name is Amber, and at 35 I firmly believed my diligent savings guaranteed absolute financial security. That conviction shattered completely when my sister confidently slammed a glossy real estate investment proposal onto my dining table. The thick document outlined a joint venture for an expensive property where we would supposedly hold equal ownership. I carefully read through the dense paragraphs detailing the complex payment structure before looking up at the two people sitting directly across from me. My mother watched the exchange with eager anticipation while my sister wore an incredibly arrogant smirk. I took a deep breath to steady my rapidly rising anger before finally breaking the tense silence. My dear sister, am I understanding this correctly? My $2 million in savings plus your $2 million loan that we will both repay. That means we are buying the apartment equally, right? I asked my sister. She rolled her eyes dramatically while leaning back in her chair with an air of absolute superiority. You really do not know how to do math? Did not they teach you that in school? My sister replied. I froze in silence as the sheer audacity of her statement hung heavily in the quiet room. I quickly realized this was never about building a shared future, but rather a highly calculated trap specifically designed to drain my hard-earned accounts. Navigating family boundaries requires immense clarity to protect your self-worth from toxic choices. The glossy promotional brochure for the luxurious Orlando vacation property lay completely flat across the smooth wooden surface of my home office desk. I spent my entire Saturday morning systematically flipping through the thick investment portfolio Courtney had confidently handed me just a few days prior. She had presented the joint venture as a foolproof opportunity to double our wealth through a rapidly booming vacation rental market in Florida. I had initially trusted her enthusiastic presentation, but something about the hurried way she consistently pushed for my immediate signature made me pause. I pulled out a yellow highlighter and began scrutinizing the complex revenue projections meticulously printed on the crisp white pages to understand the exact breakdown of our future earnings. My eyes eventually caught a highly convoluted clause, deliberately buried deep within the third section of the dense financial agreement. The legal jargon was incredibly confusing, but a careful second reading revealed a highly unbalanced payment hierarchy hidden in the fine print. The contract explicitly stated that any profits generated from future renters would be strictly prioritized to service her specific mortgage payments before being distributed into our shared accounts. I read the confusing paragraph a third time to ensure I was not misinterpreting the complex terminology she had assured me was standard business protocol. The reality of the situation slowly materialized as I traced the flow of money from the projected income column directly into her personal liability column. The brutal truth was that my $2 million in hard cash was not actually buying an equal share of a profitable asset. My lifetime of diligent savings was functioning as a massive cross-collateralization shield to secure the enormous bank loan she desperately required. There was absolutely no genuine fairness in this proposed arrangement, because my hard-earned money was taking on all the actual jeopardy. She obviously did not have the capital to fund her half of the ambitious project, so she was quietly using my money to guarantee her own financial risk. If the Florida rental market suddenly crashed or she simply defaulted on her monthly obligations, the lending institution would legally foreclose on the entire Orlando property. The bank would completely seize the building to recover her specific debt while simultaneously wiping out my entire $2 million cash investment without any penalty or financial recourse. The sheer audacity of her scheme was breathtaking because she fully intended to build her personal real estate portfolio using my financial security as her permanent safety net. A lesser person might have immediately picked up the phone to scream at her for such a blatant attempt at manipulation. I strongly considered driving directly to her house to demand a full explanation for the deceptive clauses she tried to slip past my radar. However, I quickly realized that an emotional confrontation would only give her the perfect opportunity to play the victim and deny her true intentions. She would likely claim it was a simple drafting error by the brokers or accuse me of being overly paranoid about a standard real estate transaction. She had always possessed a remarkable talent for manipulating our mother into blindly taking her side during any financial dispute we ever had. I knew I needed to handle this volatile situation with cold logic rather than impulsive anger to ensure she could never twist the narrative in her favor. I calmly gathered the scattered brochures and neatly stacked the highlighted contract pages before sliding everything into my leather briefcase. I smoothed out the final page containing the signature line she was so desperate for me to sign and closed the leather flap. I locked the briefcase latch with a satisfying click and placed it securely on the small table next to my front door. I resolved to maintain a completely normal demeanor during our upcoming family interactions to prevent her from suspecting that I had uncovered her trap. Exposing a greed this deep required unbreakable legal proof from an outside expert who could permanently dismantle her deceptive financial web without giving her any room to escape the consequences. That weekend, dinner at the house of my mother, Susan, unfolded within an incredibly suffocating and heavily calculated atmosphere. Waiting patiently until the main course was served allowed me to casually steer our conversation toward the complex financial structure of the proposed Orlando property. My inquiries were carefully formulated to specifically target the glaring discrepancies discovered within the thick investment portfolio earlier that week. Observing their immediate physical reactions without openly accusing anyone of intentionally drafting a fraudulent real estate document became my primary objective. I leaned slightly forward while maintaining a completely neutral expression to pose the most critical question regarding the projected cash flow. So, if the rental agreement falls through for any reason at all, who is going to actually pay the massive monthly debt to the bank? I asked Courtney directly. Courtney immediately stopped cutting her steak while her facial expression hardened into a look of profound annoyance at my direct financial inquiry. She quickly waved her hand in a dismissive gesture before launching into a rehearsed speech filled with empty corporate buzzwords designed to confuse the issue. You really need to stop overreacting about normal business procedures, because all the potential risks have already been calculated into the joint contingency fund, Courtney replied with deep condescension. The way she skillfully avoided mentioning the explicit contract clause prioritizing her personal mortgage payments over our shared capital reserves spoke volumes. Before I could present the mathematical impossibility of her vague contingency plan, Susan swiftly inserted herself into the escalating financial debate, placing her silverware down with a sharp clatter, signaled her intention to fix me with a deeply disappointed stare across the polished dining table. Your sister is trying to build a secure financial future for our whole family. So, can you please try to be a little less selfish for once? Susan scolded me harshly. Absolute silence filled the suddenly quiet dining room, while the heavy weight of those unjust accusations settled over the remaining food. The profound irony of being called selfish while someone else actively plotted to drain my entire life savings was certainly not lost on me. Watching the two of them exchange a brief look of mutual solidarity made me realize that presenting logical arguments would be a complete waste of energy. Susan had already chosen to blindly defend her favored daughter without ever bothering to review the actual legal document securing the transaction. Their unified front effectively demonstrated how greed and entrenched family favoritism would always overpower any rational discussion about fair monetary boundaries. A silent calculation in my head confirmed that exposing the cross-collateralization trap right then would only result in a pointless shouting match. Finding a much more definitive resolution that they could never argue against or manipulate through tearful guilt trips became my singular focus. I deliberately picked up my linen napkin from my lap and placed it neatly next to my half-eaten dinner plate to signal the end of my participation. Pushing my chair back from the table allowed me to smoothly announce that an unexpected work emergency required my immediate attention back at my apartment. Neither of them offered any vocal objections because my abrupt departure clearly provided them with the exact conversational victory they both desperately wanted. I reached for my heavy winter coat resting casually over the back of the dining chair while keeping my eyes focused firmly on the front door. Wasting a single additional glance on the fake triumphant smirk undoubtedly spreading across Courtney's face under the bright dining room chandelier seemed entirely unnecessary. Stepping out into the cool evening air finally allowed me to breathe freely away from the toxic environment suffocating my better judgment. I walked briskly toward my parked vehicle with a renewed sense of clarity regarding the necessary legal steps required for the following day. Gripping the leather steering wheel tightly gave me a moment to mentally review the specific questions needed for my legal counsel appointment. Driving away from her house cemented my absolute resolve to protect my financial independence from the people supposed to have my best interests at heart. The following morning, I walked through the thick glass doors of the office belonging to my real estate attorney, Gregory. I placed the entire Florida property purchase file directly onto his polished wooden desk while requesting a comprehensive review. Finding every hidden legal risk buried behind the complex transaction required someone with his specific expertise in contract law. Gregory opened the thick manila folder and immediately began scanning the printed pages with a highly critical eye. He logged into his secured desktop computer to run a quick background check on the financial status of the other party. The results glowing on his monitor completely validated all the terrible suspicions I had developed over the previous weekend. He turned his computer screen toward me to reveal that Courtney possessed an incredibly low credit score currently sitting in the red zone. Her terrible financial history meant she was absolutely unqualified to secure a $2 million mortgage on her own merit without a guarantor. The lending institution required a massive cash deposit from a highly reliable source to approve her highly questionable loan application. Gregory leaned forward in his leather chair to clearly explain the catastrophic danger hidden within the original agreement she had provided. He pushed a printed draft across the wide desk before forcefully crossing out the vague profit-sharing clause with his metal pen. If you sign this original document, the bank has the right to foreclose on the entire property if she misses a payment by even a single month. Gregory warned me in a serious tone. The stark reality of losing my entire life savings because of her reckless spending habits made my next decision incredibly simple. Hearing a professional confirm the malicious intent behind the joint venture agreement permanently erased any remaining guilt I felt about my plan. I need you to ensure that my assets are completely independent of any of her credit loans. I instructed him firmly. My demand left absolutely no room for negotiation regarding the legal protection of my hard-earned $2 million. Gregory nodded in complete understanding before pulling a fresh legal pad from his top drawer to begin writing the necessary revisions. I specifically requested him to draft a brand new counter-offer contract establishing impenetrable boundaries around my personal ownership rights. This updated document needed to completely eliminate every single cross-collateralization clause she had maliciously inserted into the original paperwork. We spent the next 2 hours meticulously constructing a legal fortress designed to permanently separate our financial obligations from one another. The revised agreement explicitly stated that any failure to pay her specific mortgage would never trigger a default on my cash investment. Securing this airtight protection was the absolute only way to prevent her from quietly stealing my entire financial future. We both agreed that maintaining absolute silence about this newly drafted contract was our most powerful strategic advantage moving forward. Revealing our defensive maneuver too early would simply give her enough time to invent a different manipulation tactic or change her approach. She needed to continue believing her original deceptive plan was working perfectly until the absolute last possible second of the transaction. Keeping her completely in the dark required me to act normally during all of our upcoming family interactions despite knowing the truth. I carefully folded the freshly printed counteroffer and tucked it securely inside the hidden pocket of my leather briefcase for safekeeping. Leaving his quiet office gave me a profound sense of security, knowing the law was finally working to protect my interests. The financial trap she had so carefully laid for me was about to snap shut directly onto her own greedy fingers. 3 days later, my phone began vibrating constantly with probing and pressuring text messages from highly confused relatives. Courtney noticed my apparent hesitation regarding the contract and proactively launched a malicious smear campaign across our extended family network. She deliberately spread false rumors, claiming I was jealously trying to mess up a life-changing investment opportunity for everyone. Her calculated gossip was specifically designed to apply intense social pressure to force my immediate compliance with her unreasonable demands. Escaping the constant notifications required leaving my apartment to meet my best friend Mia at a quiet neighborhood cafe. I desperately needed an objective perspective to relieve the psychological burden and solidify my resolve against the ongoing character assassination. Mia listened patiently to the entire situation while stirring her iced drink on the small wooden table sitting between us. She firmly validated my defensive strategy and strongly advised me against letting emotional family ties cloud my logical financial decisions. You owe them absolutely nothing, so do not let those baseless rumors force you into signing a financial death sentence, Mia told me with absolute conviction. Hearing her objective confirmation gave me the exact mental clarity required to execute the next phase of my defensive operation. I know exactly what I am doing because I'm just giving her a little more illusion before I personally shatter everything, I replied confidently while grabbing my purse. Walking back to my vehicle provided me with ample time to strategize my exact phrasing for the deceptive electronic communication. Returning to my quiet apartment later that afternoon allowed me to initiate a highly deceptive countermeasure against her daily manipulation. I decided to actively play along with her greedy narrative by carefully drafting a remarkably soft and submissive text message. Typing the words required suppressing my utter disgust as I falsely claimed my funds were fully organized for the upcoming transaction. I deliberately assured her that I was completely ready to proceed with finalizing the lucrative Orlando property deal very soon. Hitting the send button felt incredibly satisfying because it officially locked her into a path of irreversible public humiliation. Courtney took the bait exactly as predicted, by responding within seconds using an incredibly smug and triumphant tone. I took a sip of the bitter black coffee sitting on my kitchen counter while staring at her victorious reply appearing on the illuminated screen with a completely cold heart. Her immediate assumption of total victory caused her to instantly cease broadcasting all the negative stories to our extended relatives. The sudden silence from my family members confirmed she had actively called off her attack dogs the moment she felt secure. She genuinely believed her psychological warfare had successfully broken my resistance and secured her unrestricted access to my $2 million. Watching her arrogant confidence grow exponentially only confirmed how desperately she needed my cash to fund her fraudulent lifestyle. Maintaining this carefully constructed facade required tremendous discipline, but it guaranteed she would never anticipate the legal trap awaiting her. I placed my silenced phone face down on the granite counter to avoid looking at her fake heart emojis. I consciously chose to ignore the multiple missed calls from my mother, who was undoubtedly calling to celebrate my supposed submission. Giving her a false sense of absolute security was the most crucial step in ensuring my counteroffer remained perfectly hidden. Every single day that passed brought her one step closer to a devastating reality check she could never possibly escape. She was happily digging her own financial grave while I silently prepared the final paperwork to push her inside. The upcoming weekend would finally expose the undeniable truth about her terrible credit score to everyone she had systematically lied to. 1 week before the birthday party of my sister, I focused entirely on establishing an impenetrable security wall around my personal assets. Scheduling a private appointment at my primary financial institution allowed me to finalize the complex paperwork required for transferring my $2 million. Handing the signed authorization forms to the financial advisor felt like adding a titanium lock to my personal bank vault. I instructed the senior branch manager to move my entire cash reserve into a completely independent trust fund without any further delay. The strict legal parameters of this newly established account permanently blocked any unauthorized individuals from ever attempting to access my money. The dry mechanical sound of the processing machines in the VIP banking room echoed loudly while my substantial wealth officially entered absolute safety. Securing my funds meant she could never manipulate a shared account or forge my signature to access the necessary down payment. Meanwhile, Courtney felt incredibly confident about securing my cash. So, she aggressively utilized her personal credit cards to finance an exceptionally lavish celebration. She carelessly booked a highly expensive catering service without considering the devastating financial consequences of taking on even more high-interest consumer debt. She actively ignored her plummeting credit score to secure a massive ballroom located inside a highly prestigious downtown hotel. My mobile device constantly illuminated with incoming messages displaying numerous photographs of her extravagant menu choices and the luxurious banquet hall decorations. She was intentionally creating a suffocating atmosphere of fake celebration to manufacture immense social pressure regarding the upcoming real estate agreement. Presenting an image of massive success was her primary strategy to blind our extended relatives to the underlying financial risks. I've already paid the deposit to the event planning team, so we will celebrate my birthday while finalizing the property contract this weekend. Courtney texted me enthusiastically. Her arrogant assumption regarding my ultimate compliance only fueled my determination to execute the legal countermeasure. Exactly as Gregory and I had planned. That sounds absolutely wonderful because I have already finished preparing a very special gift specifically for your important day, I replied with a completely steady hand. My sarcastic response perfectly maintained the deceptive illusion while I walked back into my home office to retrieve the customized legal documents. Returning from the bank gave me the perfect opportunity to review the specific contract revisions Gregory had meticulously drafted for my ultimate protection. I carefully folded the printed counteroffer and placed the thick paper stack inside a sturdy leather envelope for maximum physical security. Reviewing every single protective clause one final time provided me with absolute certainty before it permanently sealed the heavy metal clasp. The ironclad agreement completely severed any potential connection between my liquid assets and her deeply flawed mortgage application. Walking toward my bedroom allowed me to select an appropriate outfit for the upcoming confrontation scheduled for the following evening. I chose a simple black dress that projected quiet authority instead of the festive colors she expected me to wear. Staring at my reflection in the tall standing mirror allowed me to physically adjust the collar of my dark evening dress. I took several measured breaths to mentally prepare myself for the inevitable public destruction of a deeply rotten biological relationship. The time for maintaining a polite family facade had officially expired because preserving my financial independence required ruthless self-preservation. She had foolishly constructed an elaborate public stage for her own financial execution, and I was fully prepared to deliver the final blow. I picked up the leather envelope from my desk and walked toward the front door with absolute clarity regarding my next actions. That fateful Saturday night, the massive crystal chandelier hanging inside the rented restaurant banquet room brightly illuminated dozens of smiling faces chatting enthusiastically. Waiters dressed in formal uniforms circled the large room carrying silver trays loaded with premium champagne glasses and gourmet appetizers. Reaching the absolute peak of the noisy celebration allowed Courtney to strike her expensive wine glass with a silver spoon to command everyone's immediate attention. She confidently projected her voice across the crowded room to loudly announce our highly anticipated joint real estate investment to all our extended relatives. Smiling triumphantly, she forcefully slapped the original purchase agreement directly onto the center of our large dining table while extending a gold pen toward me. Sitting under the expectant gaze of numerous party guests gave me the perfect opportunity to calmly refuse the writing instrument she aggressively shoved near my hand. Unzipping my secure leather envelope allowed me to slowly extract the revised legal document Gregory had prepared before dropping it heavily onto the glass surface. What crazy stunt are you pulling right now because you must sign that document immediately before you ruin everything for this family? Courtney demanded furiously. I stood up slowly from my velvet chair while locking eyes with her across the table to ensure my voice carried clearly throughout the suddenly quiet room. I know exactly how to do math, Courtney, because my calculations clearly show I am not spending $2 million in cash to finance your reckless spending habits. I replied evenly. Watching her fake triumphant smile completely vanish into a look of absolute horror provided an incredibly satisfying conclusion to her weeks of psychological manipulation. Speaking with undeniable clarity allowed me to publicly expose the hidden cross-collateralization clauses designed to silently drain my entire liquid cash reserve. Presenting the printed credit report directly from my attorney effectively revealed her terrible financial standing to every single person attending the lavish birthday celebration. The undeniable proof of her disastrous financial history circulated rapidly among the close relatives sitting nearest to our central dining location. Several family members who had previously believed her malicious rumors began whispering furiously to each other upon seeing the actual bank numbers. Courtney desperately attempted to snatch the printed credit report away from the table, but I quickly slid the documents safely out of her reach. Susan jumped up from her seat in a total panic while frantically trying to use her maternal authority to force my immediate silence. Snorts. She aggressively demanded that I show some basic respect for my older sibling during such an important family celebration held in her honor. Raising my hand slightly stopped my mother in the middle of her sentence while I forcefully pointed at the undeniable financial evidence currently resting on the wet table. I simply ignored her ridiculous demands because presenting factual financial documents did not require any apologies or fake displays of familial obedience. Realizing her gold mine had permanently slipped out of her grasp caused Courtney to lose complete control of her carefully constructed public image. Her face turned completely pale before she started screaming incoherently at the top of her lungs, surrounded by dozens of deeply shocked birthday guests. I refused to bother responding to those desperate shrieks echoing against the walls, because my objective was officially completed without a single raised voice. Pushing my chair backwards created enough physical distance between us for me to decisively step away from the chaotic scene unfolding near the head table. Leaving the uncompromised counteroffer abandoned among the spilled red wine glasses, firmly established the new reality of our completely severed biological relationship. Walking confidently toward the main exit doors allowed me to permanently leave behind the toxic environment they had desperately tried to trap me inside forever. The morning after the party, the final deadline to transfer the deposit for the Orlando property officially closed without any further extensions. Without my required financial backing, the entire real estate transaction initiated by Courtney instantly collapsed upon itself. Courtney completely lost the substantial earnest money deposit she had previously borrowed from various undisclosed lending sources to secure the initial Florida contract. The practical consequences of her incredibly reckless financial decisions materialized rather quickly over the following weeks. She now carried a massive credit card debt generated exclusively by funding that extravagantly catered birthday celebration at the downtown hotel. This, Nort's, completely unnecessary financial burden pushed her already terrible credit score directly toward the absolute brink of personal bankruptcy and legal judgments. Susan constantly explosion-arted my personal smartphone with extremely long text messages, crying about maintaining our family loyalty during times of extreme hardship. She desperately begged me to show some basic compassion by releasing my funds to save my older sibling from experiencing total financial ruin. I firmly pressed the block button on both of their contact profiles without experiencing a single moment of hesitation or lingering regret. Establishing this permanent boundary became the foundational step toward my own personal healing and rebuilding a genuinely peaceful life away from their influence. Taking permanent control of my physical and emotional environment allowed me to completely detach from their consistently toxic financial demands. I confidently redirected my hard-earned $2 million into several legitimate investment portfolios, offering guaranteed security through reputable national brokerage firms. Moving forward required protecting my mental health just as fiercely as I protected my monetary assets from any future family exploitation. Securing my financial independence effectively closed this dark chapter and allowed me to finally prioritize my own personal happiness above their highly unreasonable expectations.